Imagine living in a country where the simple act of drinking water from the wrong fountain could put your life at risk. Where children were separated by their color, where silence was the only protection, and even then, it was fragile. It was in this scenario that a man emerged who chose neither violence nor confrontation. He chose the dream. Martin Luther King Jr. was born into a world built by invisible walls, but he decided to be a bridge. Take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel for more revealing content about personalities who have made history. Let's get started. While most people said, "There's no way," he replied, "I have a dream." He faced presidents, systems, hatred, and even allies who abandoned him. His weapon was the word, his faith unwavering. In this video, you will get to know not only the speech, but the man. The boy hurt by prejudice, the pastor who became a global symbol, and the human being who believed that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Get ready. This story is real and it's still happening. Childhood and awakening. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. In his childhood, he was just ML to the family. He had two siblings and grew up in a home that valued knowledge, faith, and dignity, even amid segregation. At 6 years old, he lost his best friend, a white boy who one day simply said he could no longer play with him. The parents had forbidden it. This pain remained etched in his memory like a scar. It wasn't the last one. Martin saw his father protest against whites-only signs and refuse to enter through the back doors of stores. He saw his mother protect him with love, even when the world hurt him. And he understood from an early age that being black in America meant living in resistance all the time. But instead of hardening himself, Martin dug deeper. He studied voraciously. He read not only the Bible, but also poetry, philosophy, and science. At 13, he gave his first public speech. The topic, the Negro and the Constitution. That was just the beginning. The mind out of time. After graduating high school at 15, an age when many are still discovering who they are, Martin Luther King Jr. went straight to university. He was not just intelligent, he was visionary. He studied sociology at Morehouse College, then theology at Crozer Seminary, and finally completed his doctorate in philosophy and systematic theology in Boston. But it was not only in books that Martin found answers. He sought meaning. It was in his studies about Mahatma Gandhi that he found the cornerstone of what would be his life, non-violence as a form of struggle. He believed that moral strength was more powerful than physical strength, that peaceful protest was the most effective weapon against injustice because it exposed the cruelty of the system without spilling a drop of blood. In Boston, he also met Coretta Scott, a talented singer and activist who would become his wife and ally in all battles. But what few know is that around the same time, Martin suffered from episodes of deep depression. He even mentioned suicidal thoughts during his youth. He was a man pressured by expectation, fear, and the weight of what was to come, and yet he kept moving forward. The Montgomery boycott. In December 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, Martin did not hesitate. He saw there a chance to put into practice everything he had learned. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted more than 1 year. Black people walked kilometers every day, even in rain or strong sun, without ever giving in. It was a test of collective endurance. Martin organized meetings, wrote speeches, mediated conflicts, and prayed with the faithful. In the middle of this, his house was bombed while his wife and daughter were inside. Miraculously, no one was hurt. However, the crowd of supporters wanted to retaliate, but Martin stopped them by saying, "Whoever lives by the sword will die by the sword. We must love our enemies." He was becoming more than a leader. He was becoming a symbol. In 1963, Martin led the March on Washington. More than 250,000 people filled the streets of the American capital, and when he took the stage, his speech was initially formal and prepared. But in the background, Mahalia Jackson, a gospel singer and personal friend, shouted, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." He dropped the papers, and at that moment, one of the most iconic speeches in modern history was born. "I have a dream." He dreamed of equality, of respect, of freedom. But this speech also made him an even greater target. In 1964, at 35 years old, Martin Luther King Jr. became the youngest person in the world to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Upon taking the stage in Oslo, in front of world leaders, he did not celebrate personal victories. He spoke of black children deprived of dignity, of humiliated families, and of men imprisoned for believing in equality. And with a gesture that said everything about his essence, he donated the entire prize amount to the civil rights movement. The world recognized him as a symbol of peace, but for him, the dream was still far from being realized. And here arises the controversy often hidden in textbooks. The government of the United States, through the FBI, began to treat Martin as a national threat. Yes, the same man who received the Nobel Peace Prize was registered as a dangerous communist. The illegal recordings invaded his privacy. They disclosed intimate information with the aim of destroying his credibility. They even sent an anonymous letter to his house, demanding that he commit suicide, threatening to make supposed scandals public, a direct, silent, and cruel attack. And even so, he continued speaking because his dream was bigger than the fear. The end of the applause, pressures, and internal conflicts. With the success of the "I Have a Dream" speech, Martin Luther King Jr. became a global icon, but fame also brought loneliness. He began to be criticized, not only by racist whites, but by more radical black activists. Figures like Malcolm X accused him of being too soft, of pleasing whites, of trusting too much in a system that never respected them. The black community was divided. Many felt that peaceful protests were no longer enough. In addition, Martin began to take a stand against the Vietnam War. For him, it was a contradiction to fight for freedom in another country, while black citizens had no freedom within the United States. But what should have been a moral stance moved him even further away from the shadows of power. Martin lost political support, lost donations, and began to be seen as a radical by the mainstream media. While facing attacks from the government and pressure from within the movement itself, his health began to deteriorate. Even so, he did not give up. He said, "The true measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands in times of crisis." The last day, April of 1968, Memphis. Martin was in the city to support a sanitation workers' strike. Black men, poorly paid, treated as invisible. He knew his support there would not have national media coverage, but he went anyway. On April 3rd at the Mason Temple Church, he delivered what many believe to be one of his most profound speeches. "I have been to the top of the mountain, and I have seen the promised land. Maybe I won't get there with you, but I want you to know that we, as a people, will get there." It was almost a farewell. The next day, April 4th, Martin was on the second floor of the Lorraine Motel, smiling, relaxed, when a shot interrupted everything. The bullet went through the jaw and hit his spine. Martin Luther King Jr. died at 39 years old. Millions mourned. The world stopped. But his legacy was just beginning. Legacy. A voice that does not die. Martin Luther King's funeral was broadcast to the whole world. On his tombstone, a line from an old hymn he loved is written, "Free at last, free at last. Thanks to the Almighty God, I am free at last." In 1986, almost 2 decades after his death, the United States finally recognized his greatness with a national holiday, and today, more than 100 countries study his legacy. But the most important thing is not in the books. It's in the streets, in every protest, in every voice that rises against injustice, in every young person who refuses to accept the world as it is. Because Martin Luther King Jr. taught us something powerful, that sometimes one man's dream is the beginning of freedom for many. Martin Luther King Jr. was an ordinary man, a pastor, a father, a citizen, but with enough courage to confront the structure of an entire country. He did not want to be a martyr. He wanted to be a bridge. And even today, his voice challenges us. Are you doing something with what you believe in? Because having a dream is the first step, but living for it is the real challenge. Now I ask you, is Martin Luther King's dream still alive? Or are we asleep again? Leave your answer in the comments. If this story touched you, like, share, and subscribe. Here, we keep alive the voices that change the world. Immortal stories, where dreams do not die. Until the next video.